Today's season prediction video is going to be a good one, guys. I'm talking about the Holy War, Utah at BYU. I'm going to give the game prediction and the season predictions for both of these teams. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude. Hey, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. I do college football videos every single day, and right now is a really good time to hit that subscribe button. I'm in the middle of my season prediction videos for the 2021 college football season. Right now, I'm on teams 33 and 34, so you'll have access to all the predictions that I've done and all the predictions that I will do. Don't forget to check out my friends at Tri-State Wood Sketch. All you have to do is send him a picture, and he'll turn it into a beautiful piece of art on wood. Check out his website at www.tristatewoodsketch.com. Tell him Golden Blue Dude sent you and you'll get 20% off. Today we're talking about Utah at BYU, the Holy War. This is a great rivalry. I think it's a little underrated. This year it's going to be in Provo, so that does benefit BYU just a little bit, but BYU loses a lot, and Utah is my wild card in the Pac-12 South. First, we'll start with Utah. Last year they finished 3-2, third in the Pac-12 South. Their preseason ranking 26. 18 starters returned from the team that got really hot last year at the end of the season. I think that will carry over into 2021. That includes 10 starters on offense. We'll talk about the offense first. First off, there's a great quarterback battle going on in Salt Lake City, I'm telling you. First, we have the Baylor transfer, quarterback Charlie Brewer. Last year, he was 198 for 321. That's 61.7%, threw for 1,958 yards, 14 touchdowns, but 8 interceptions. The other quarterback in the running, quarterback Cameron Rising. Last year, he was 3 of 6, 50%, 45 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interceptions, but he's having a great spring practice. I think Utah's running game is going to be super solid this year. We start off with the Oklahoma transfer, running back TJ Pledger. 95 carries for 451 yards. That's 4.7 yards a carry and 5 touchdowns. Then there's running back Micah Bernard. 15 carries for 76 yards. That's 5.1 yards a carry. Now let's look at Utah's passing game. I think it's going to be pretty good as well. They have 2 competent tight ends, starting with tight end Cole Fotheringham. 4 receptions for 52 yards, and then tight end Brant Kuth. 25 receptions for 263 yards. By the way, guys, as usual, these rosters have tricky names, so I probably will mispronounce some names. Now let's look at Utah's wide receiving core. Wide receiver Devon Veal, 2 receptions for 12 yards. Another Oklahoma transfer, wide receiver Theo Howard, 13 receptions for 163 yards. But in 2019, 51 receptions for 677 yards and 4 touchdowns. Wide receiver Britton Covey, 19 receptions for 264 yards and 3 touchdowns. And they have wide receiver Tyron Young-Smith. He's 6'4", 230 pounds, and adds a lot of size to this wide receiving core. Wide receiver Solomon Enos, 11 receptions for 108 yards and 1 touchdown. And wide receiver Jalen Dixon, 24 receptions for 343 yards and 1 touchdown. I think Utah's going to have a pretty good offense this year, but it's not even going to be the strength of this team. I think the strength will be the defense. They returned 8 starters from last year's great defense. They're pretty good at stopping the run. They have a great pass defense. Let's start with the front 7. Starting with the defensive line. Defensive end Micah Tafua, 14 tackles, 10 by himself, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass deflections. Defensive end Maxis Hupe, 6 tackles, 4 by himself, 1 sack, 2 forced fumbles, 1 pass deflection. Defensive tackle Vian Moala, 4 tackles, 1 by himself, 1 pass deflection. Defensive tackle Hauti Huduteu, 10 tackles, 5 by himself, 2 sacks, 1 pass deflection. Now the linebacking core. Linebacker Nefi Sewell, 40 tackles, 27 by himself, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions, and 2 pass deflections. Linebacker Devin Lloyd, 48 tackles, 33 by himself, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Then incoming 3-star recruit linebacker Jeremy Mercier, 6'3" and 233 pounds, and he's a redshirt junior this year. This year the Utes secondary will not be a liability. It could actually be one of the best in the Pac-12 in 2021. Complete opposite of last year when it was one of the biggest question marks of the entire Utah team. Starting with their cornerbacks. Cornerback Jatravius Broughton, 26 tackles, 18 by himself, 4 pass deflections. Quarterback Clark Phillips III, 25 tackles, 22 by himself, 1 interception, which he returned 4 touchdowns, 2 pass deflections. Free safety Vontae Davis, 16 tackles, 11 by himself, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions, and 2 pass deflections. Strong safety Kamoe Letu, 4 tackles, 3 by himself. Nickelback Malone Mattel, 5 tackles, 4 by himself, and 3 pass deflections. Listen, guys, Utah will surprise some people this year, but not me. I see this coming. They are well coached and have a ton of experience coming back this year. Utah is going to be a very dangerous team in 2021. Here's a look at the 2021 Utah college football schedule. First, they start off with a home game against Weber State. Win. Then the road trip to BYU. I'll predict that at the end of the video. At San Diego State. Win. Washington State at home. Win. They get their bye week. At USC. That's a tough loss. If this game were being being played in Salt Lake City, I would probably predict a win for Utah. Arizona State at home, that's a win, especially with all the new allegations and turmoil that's going on in Arizona State. At Oregon State, win. Home game against UCLA. UCLA is going to be better, but this is a win. Then on the road to Stanford. I think this is Utah's letdown game. Stanford is good enough to pull off the upset. It's on the road. I'm going to say loss for Utah here. At Arizona, win. Oregon at home, win. Colorado at home, win. So depending on that BYU prediction, I have Utah either going 10-2 or 9-3. Either way, a big step forward in 2021. Look out for the Utes. Now it's time to talk about BYU. Last year they finished the season 11-1. Their preseason ranking is 51. Whether you want to accept it or not, especially if you're a BYU fan, this will be a rebuild year. Ton of key losses. The offensive line is going to have to be rebuilt. Look, forget about the double-digit win season this year. Finishing the season above 500 would be a success for this year, and definitely a much more reasonable goal for 2021. According to analysts, BYU lost more offensive production than any other team in the nation. They also have a new offensive coordinator. Speaking of which, let's talk about their offense first. First up, the quarterback battle. First quarterback, Jaron Hall. Last year he was 31 for 46. That's 67.4%. Threw for 420 yards and 1 touchdown. Dual threat quarterback, 29 carries for 139 yards, 4.8 yards a carry and 3 touchdowns. The other quarterback in this battle, quarterback Baylor Romney, 24 for 35. That's 68.6%. Threw for 261 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Slight dual threat quarterback, 7 carries for 21 yards, 3 yards a carry. This year I think BYU will actually be better in the run game. They have some good running backs. Starting with running back Tyler Algier, 150 carries for 1,130 yards at 7.5 yards a carry and 13 touchdowns. Running back Lapini Katoa, 84 carries for 444 yards. That's 5.3 yards a carry and 5 touchdowns. Now look at their passing game. First, their tight end Isaac Rex, 37 receptions for 429 yards and 12 touchdowns. Now let's look at their wide receiving core. And they did lose their leading wide receiver from last year. Wide receiver Puka Nakua, the Washington transfer, 9 receptions for 151 yards and 1 touchdown. Wide receiver Samson Nakua, the Utah transfer, 4 receptions for 29 yards and 1 touchdown. Wide receiver Gunnar Romney, 39 receptions for 767 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Kiana Hill, 4 receptions for 70 yards and 1 touchdown. Wide receiver Neil Hayu, 45 receptions for 603 yards and 4 touchdowns. And wide receiver Chris Jackson, 6 receptions for 22 yards. I think out of both units, the offense will take the biggest step backwards. Now let's take a look at BYU's defense. Defense will probably be the strength of BYU in 2021. Last year, they were 10th in total defense. Problem is, they did lose 3 defensive line starters. That's going to hurt. Let's start with the defensive line. Defensive end Tyler Batty, 13 tackles, 10 by himself, 4 sacks. Defensive end Uriah Yatau, 13 tackles, 3 by himself, 1.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Defensive tackle Caden Hawes, 15 tackles, 7 by himself. And defensive tackle Atanesa Mahi, 22 tackles, 14 by himself, 2 sacks. Out of all the groups on the defense, the linebackers will be the strength of this defense. Starting with linebacker Max Tooley, 44 tackles, 24 by himself, 1 interception, 1 pass deflection. Linebacker Keenan Kiley, 72 tackles, 37 by himself, 1 pass deflection. Linebacker Drew Jensen, 27 tackles, 11 by himself, 1.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception, 1 pass deflection. Linebacker Peyton Wilger, 57 tackles, 30 by himself, 1 forced fumble, 4 pass deflections. Linebacker George Udo, 25 tackles, 16 by himself, 3 sacks, 1 pass deflection. Secondary is very questionable this year. It's very thin, but several players are ready to step up and fill those roles. But it's still a big question mark for this defense. Starting with the cornerbacks. Cornerback D'Angelo Mendel, 6 tackles, 2 by himself, 1 pass deflection. Cornerback Keenan Ellis, 13 tackles, 6 by himself, 3 pass deflections. Free safety Malik Moore, 6 tackles, 4 by himself, 1 interception, and 1 pass deflection. Strong safety Chaz Ayu, 2 tackles, 1 by himself. And nickelback Jacob Robinson, 2 tackles, 6 by himself, 1 sack. So not a lot of experience in the secondary at all. BYU will be vulnerable in the passing game. Losing so much production from last year's team is going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot, BYU fans. On top of that, BYU has a much tougher schedule this year than what they had last year. Having a winning season would be a huge accomplishment for BYU this year. So get rid of any double-digit win dreams that you have this year. It's just not going to happen. Here's BYU's 2021 college football schedule. First, a home game against Arizona. Win. Then a home game against Utah. I'll predict that here in just a minute. A home game against Arizona State. Loss. South Florida at home. Win. At Utah State. Win. Boise State at home. Loss. At Baylor. Loss. Baylor's going to be a much better team this year. At Washington State. Win. Virginia at home. Loss. Virginia's going to be a surprise team in the Coastal this year. I'm telling you right now. Idaho State at home. Win. And they get their bye week. At Georgia Southern. Loss. Georgia Southern's going to be a pretty good team in the Sun Belt this year. I'm telling you right now. Then at USC, that's a loss. So depending on the Utah prediction, I have BYU going either 6-6 or 5-7. Now for the actual game prediction itself. The Holy War. Utah at BYU. It does help BYU that this is in Provo this year. That's a tremendous home field advantage. But I think the talent gap is pretty significant this year. Utah's going to be a very good team this year, and BYU lost a lot from last year's great team. I'm not saying BYU's going to be horrific this year, but they will take a significant step backwards. It's going to happen. I think the first half's going to be close, that home field advantage will help, but depth and experience will wear out BYU in the second half. I have Utah winning this game 34-24. This is one of many tough games for BYU in 2021. It's going to be a rough season. BYU isn't like Alabama or some of these other powerhouse programs where they can just reload. They're going to have to build back up to get back to the level that they were, but they can do it. I think Utah will be able to expose BYU's secondary and pretty much have their way in the passing game. BYU will be relying heavily on their run, and Utah has a pretty good run defense, so I think all advantages point in the direction of Utah except for home field advantage. So that means for Utah, I have them going 10-2 overall. Pretty good season, and it wouldn't surprise me if they actually were able to beat USC and win the South. They are my dark horse to win the Pac-12 South, but definitely a 10-win season for Utah. For BYU, I have them going 5-7. That's a big drop from last year. But like I said, they're not a powerhouse program. They can't just reload. They lost the most offensive production out of any team. They are going to take a step back, but I have a feeling BYU is going to be back with the vengeance here in about 2 or 3 years. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.